Welcome back to Mind Your Business. It's not every day that someone has the chance to catch up with a former Fortune 500 executive. Well, recently I had the chance to have a one-on-one candid conversation with the former CEO of Medtronic. He took a company from $1.1 billion to $60 billion. What are the traits that one needs to have to accomplish that? In this episode, Bill shares so many important aspects that one needs to have the proper mindset to run a company of one or a company of many tens of thousands. Feel free to share your thoughts and your feedback, your comments in the comment section below. Enjoy this incredible, one-of-a-kind interview. Tonight's guest is none other than Bill George, former Medtronic chairman and CEO, noted best-selling author. Just a little bit about the incredible guests that we're treated to tonight. Bill George was chair and CEO of Medtronic, the world's leading medical technology company. Under his leadership, Medtronic's market capitalization grew from $1.1 billion, with a B, to $60 billion, averaging 35% a year. Earlier in his career, he was an executive at Honeywell and Litton Industries. He served in the U.S. Department of Defense. He has an incredible list of accolades and leadership positions that he has held. It's an incredible treat and a real honor to have with us on the line Bill George, and we're talking about his brand new release, which is a re-release, an updated release of his book, True North. Now, back in 2007, I got the book then, and I went through it. And now we're treated to his updated release. Bill George, it's an honor to have you on Mind Your Business. Thank you for joining me here on 710 WOR.
Thank you, Yitzchok. It's a privilege to be here. Congratulations on your great show.
Thank you.
And it's also on WOR and all the listeners in this part of the world.
Thank you. So, before we get into the important questions that our team prepared, perhaps you could just walk down memory lane. You know, when you were a kid running around in school in fifth grade, were you dreaming of what you've actually accomplished in life?
Well, let me say, I was dreaming of trying to do something significant in my life to make my life worthwhile. And my father implanted in my brain about that time that I should be head of a major company. And but I started out, I can tell you, I was never chosen to lead anything. In junior high and high school, I was never on the student council, in lots of organizations, never chosen to lead. Good enough tennis player to play 2 years of college tennis at Georgia Tech, but not even co-captain in my high school tennis team. So I decided to run for president of senior class, and I lost by a margin of 2-1. So you could see the kids in my school didn't have much of a leader. So I went off to Georgia Tech, and I repeated my sins all over and ran for office 6 times and lost all 6. So now I'm 0 for 7 and feeling like a loser. The best thing that ever happened to me was some seniors pulled me aside and said, Bill, no one's ever going to want to work with you, much less be led by you, because you're moving so fast to get ahead. You don't take time for other people. And you know what? They were right. I didn't really understand that leadership is all about relationships with people. And today that's more true than ever.
I'm going to jump to, in the introduction of this incredible book, and again, we're talking True North, Emerging Leader Edition by Bill George and Zach Clayton, practicing solid values. Integrity, however, is one value required of every authentic leader. Let's talk about integrity.
Well, you can't lead without integrity. We've seen people that lie, cheat, steal. We saw what happened years ago with phony companies like Enron. We've seen poor Elizabeth Holmes going to jail now for lacking integrity, and people like Adam Newman at WeWork. And I think you've got to tell the truth all your life. You're known by your reputation. And why would I trust to work with any person that didn't tell the truth? So integrity to me goes deeper than just the absence of lying. You've got to tell me the whole truth. Then we can work together. We can solve problems. I will support you. Everyone has problems. But I do think that's an essential value every leader must have.
Now, a few sentences later, you have another great line. The test of authentic leaders' values is not what they say, but the values they practice under pressure. And perhaps we could discuss that. Everyone in the C-suite will at some point or throughout the day deal with pressure. What are your suggestions and techniques on how to deal with it, grapple with it, and then communicate it to others without losing your cool?
Yeah, I think first, that's why I started out my new book talking about learning who you are, your true north, your life story. Where did you come from? Your crucibles, to be proud of that and learn from those crucibles, difficult experience when all the pretense is stripped away. And you've got to stand there and realize, look yourself in the mirror and say, who am I and who do I want to be? Not what am I, what's my title, how much money do I have, how much power I have. No, it's all about who am I. And when you know that, then when you're under pressure, you can stay true to that. It is tempting to get pulled off your true north, but some people get pulled off so far they can never come back. One of them was a colleague of mine. I served on 3 boards, including Goldman Sachs and the World Economic Forum, Rajat Gupta, a great leader who got totally pulled off course because of the pressure. His pressure was to make a lot of money. And so he involved in insider trading and went to jail, sadly, for 2 years. So I think you just got to stay grounded in who you are. So I say before you go out and lead, you need to know who you are and what's important to you. What are your principles in leading? What are the beliefs you have? And then you take and put those into practice with people.
Now, do you recommend that a person actually sits down either with a consultant or a spouse, a close relationship, in order to help them develop that, or does it come naturally? How does someone come to the realization of what their true north is?
Well, we, in my book and all the classes I teach at Harvard, we ask people actually, first of all, to write out what they believe and write out their true north and write out the difficult times, these crucibles they've had, because like when things are going well and you're not under pressure, it's easy to follow your value. But what happens if you're at risk of losing your job or, losing everything you've worked toward? That's what you find the real test of a leader. So yes, then I think you go and talk about it with other people. Spouse is a great person. Maybe you have a coach, maybe you have a mentor. I have a men's group. You talk it out. We use 6-person groups at all my courses, classes, to just share openly who you are. And I think the fact that you hear yourself telling your life story, you can be much more honest and open that other people accept you for who you are. And they aren't going to reject you because you did this horrible thing when you were 12 years old.
We're speaking with Bill George. He wrote the book True North along with Zach Clayton, which is now there's a re-release, the Emerging Leadership Edition. Another sentence you have in here which talks about the authentic leadership is as follows. First, you have to understand yourself because the hardest person you will ever have to lead is yourself. What a powerful sentence. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, that's the self that gets pulled off because you're tempted. I got tempted. Back in my Honeywell days, I was eager to become CEO. And I was on that track. I was on that course. And I was trying to grab for that brass ring up there, the title of being CEO. And I was losing sight of who I was. And finally, one day I was driving home. I looked myself in the mirror and I saw a miserable person, me, because I was losing it. And I went home and told my wife, Penny, this. She's been my greatest supporter. And she said, Bill, I've been trying to tell you this for a year. You just didn't want to listen. And she was right. And I had turned down Medtronic 3 times for a job at that point. So I talked to my men's group the next morning. I just finished with them this morning. And they encouraged me to reopen discussion with Medtronic, which I did. And it's the best thing I ever did. It opened up the door to everything that's happened for the 13 years I was there and for the last 20 years since I left, because that was a company with mission and values where I could lead with my heart, be who I was, not trying to just be a numbers guy, not just trying to be an automaton or run a big bureaucracy, but really get in and really create a great organization with great people who are all committed to the same goal of restoring people to full life and health.
By the way, you referred to your group a few times. How important is it for anyone, and especially an executive, to have some trusted people that they could turn to talk things out?
I think it's essential that you have a group talk things out. And one of the first people that I feature in the book on the negative side doesn't have that is Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. He pushed out Sheryl Sandberg. He pushed out his wise mentors, people like Donald Graham. And he's got a group of young people that idolize him and follow him, working for him now. But he is all over the map. As Jim Burke said, when you don't know what your values are, you're going to swim in chaos. And Facebook is in chaos. And I think it's because Mark isn't grounded in who he is and doesn't know who he is and doesn't have his true north. And I feel sad about that. But he just jumped through it, and he's more worried about how many followers he has and how many people on his platform and how many billions he's worth.
We're speaking with Bill George, the author of True North, the new leadership edition, emerging leader edition. It was just re-released this September. This late August. It is, of course, in Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. It's at bookstores nationwide. It's a Wiley publication. We're going to take a short commercial break. Stay tuned. And we're back. Mind Your Business with Yitzchok Saftlas right here on 710 WOR and the powerful iHeartRadio network. Welcome back. Tonight's guest is none other than Bill George. He was the former CEO, chairman of Medtronic. There are millions of Americans, perhaps tens of millions of Americans, who have benefited from Medtronic and the various medical breakthroughs, technologies, and equipment that they have envisioned and produced. Many of it during Bill's leadership at Medtronic. He then wrote the book, or actually the book was written when you were still at Medtronic, or you had left Medtronic in 07?
You can't write a book when you're CEO. You don't have perspective. You don't have time.
So it was written after he had left Medtronic, True North, and just recently, in fact, this August, the re-release, True North, an emerging leader edition, leading authentically in today's workplace. We touched on a number of points in the first segment of tonight's show. Now we're going to get into some additional points. A special thank you, of course, to Elena, who made this all happen. Thanking the team. Okay, let's talk about demonstrating self-discipline. I'm going to read an incredible 2 sentences in the book. This requires that an executive accepts full responsibility for outcomes and holding others accountable for their performance. When leaders fall short, it is equally important to admit their mistakes and initiate immediate corrective action. So there's really 2 points in here. One is accountability, and the other is, hey, if I messed up, I have to be open and honest and accountable to others as well. How would you handle that one?
Before I answer this, let me say that this is a whole new book. And some of the principles from the original 2007 book are very much alive and well that we're talking about. But the people I'm covering in the book are all brand new people and very exciting. And we interviewed for this book because there's so much that's happened in the last 15 years. Now, as far as accountability and leaders admitting their mistakes, I think, in the old days, people didn't want to admit their mistakes. They'd afraid to be criticized. Today, we say vulnerability is power. Being vulnerable, when I admit my mistakes, then the people who work with me can admit their mistakes and we can solve problems. If you don't admit your mistakes, you wind up like Jeff Immelt did, trying to rationalize everything and never building a company, in fact, destroying shareholder value at GE. You have to be willing to admit when you're going on the wrong track and say, when you offend someone, you say, I'm sorry. And can we put it back together? Can we put our relationship back together? So that's your job as a leader, to get out and do that with people and be open. And then encourage them to admit their mistakes. How do you know what's going on? One of the big problems CEOs have is a lot of them don't know what's going on. They spend 70% of their time in meetings in the head shed. They never get out with their people. If you go out and talk to your people, you'll know what's going on. You go to the stores like my colleague Hubert Joly did at Best Buy. You get out and talk to people on the production lines. and you get out and talk to people in your labs to see what they're working on. That's where the action is. It's not up in some meeting at headquarters looking at statistics.
Now, in the new book, Chapter 1, Your Life Story, you have a quote here by Howard Schultz. The reservoir of all my life experiences shaped me as a person and a leader. And then you have some bullet points further down about great leaders. None were born as leaders. None had innate characteristics, traits, or styles of a leader. None succeeded in emulating other leaders. Could you please elaborate on that?
Howard Schultz is a man who really knows who he is. He grew up in the Bayview housing projects in Brooklyn or in Queens. And, he came from very poor circumstances. He's never forgotten that. He still treasures that. That's why he treasures every person comes into a Starbucks store. That's why he was so shaken when two black men were walked out of a store in Philadelphia because of the color of their skin. And so he said, that's not who we are. He's tried to live his life story and the crucibles and tough times he went through. So I think that's true for all of us. We've got to know and process our own life stories and be proud of it. I was with a woman yesterday who comes from Russia. She's not proud of what Vladimir Putin's doing, but she's very proud of being from Russia. She's an American citizen as much as I am, but she's proud of her heritage. Why not? Why shouldn't we be? Because, America is the great melting pot where people come together. Somebody says it's more like a mosaic than a melting pot because we all piece together. But if we have diverse people around us, like a Howard Schultz, like my colleague from Russia, like my friend John Hope Bryant, who is black, or Ken Frazier, who's grandson of a slave, or all the women in my book that are just fantastic, we make better decisions. We have diverse people around us. But that also, as we learn who we are through differences, not sameness, not by surrounding ourselves that everyone is the same as we are.
A topic that you touch on is also leadership is a journey. One of the sentences, there's no such thing as an instant leader. Now, today you have a lot of the millennials that are like, all right, and like you even admitted, you at the Honeywell, I just want to race up to the CEO. A 20-year-old, a 30-year-old thinks like that. Perhaps talk about how important life experiences. Leadership is a journey. It's a great line. Could you?
Well, you only learn leadership by doing it. You're not born with those qualities. You do it. And, it's a journey. Think of it. Last 2 weeks, I was climbing in the mountains in Switzerland for 2 solid weeks. But, you go up and you go down. And think of it like that. You may climb a mountain and you find out, wow, this is not all I expected. I have to go down in the valley to find the next one. That often happens in our careers. Happened to me early on. I worked for a great company. I started the consumer microwave oven business back in 1970. But you know what? The core of the company was owned by Lynn Industry. There was corruption there, and I had to leave. I couldn't stay. And not in our part of the business, but at the corporate headquarters. So you find, I got to find a place where I can be myself. That's what I say when I got to Medtronic. So you may have to have some experiences. As colleague says, you got to rub up against the world and find out who you are and who is it you want to surround yourself with. I always tell my students that if you surround yourself with bad people, it's going to rub off on you. You may think it won't, but it will. So be careful of who you associate with as close friends in college.
I'm reading a sentence from the book. While many leaders have deep-seated fear of failure, the irony is they learn the most from their failures. Can we talk about turning failures into successes?
Absolutely. That's where you learn when things don't go your way. And that's the greatest learning. And you get knocked down. We're all going to get knocked down in life. The question is, are you going to pick yourself off the ground and come back? And I think that's the key. So I encourage leaders to get out and take risks, maybe fail, but you'll be a much better leader if you can do that. If you try to be Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect, it's simply not going to work. So you learn from these failures, and then you come back really strong. This didn't go well, but now I've got an opportunity to have something go really well. So I call it learning through failure is a great gift. And look at Steve Jobs, one of the greatest inventors of the former era, and he gets fired. And he actually went out and processed for 5 or 6 years and started a company called Next and worked at Pixar. He learned a lot about himself. When he came back, he was a much better leader because he had failed before. He learned about himself.
Now, we know that every single circumstance has to be analyzed independently. But with that intro, is there any type of tip or suggestion that you could share that would give some type of guidance of how long someone should stick it out when they're trying an initiative and it's just not working? When should they throw in the towel? For how long should they hold out to try to assess if it's really going to work?
Well, I encourage put your head down and try to make it work. But if it gets to the point you're working for a tyrant, as I once was, then you got to make the move. If it's just the business isn't working, then hang in there and figure out how to make it work and make some changes. If it absolutely doesn't work, then be honest and say, we're going to close this business down. I've had to start new ventures and shut them down. That worked fine. That's okay. That happens. Not everything is going to be successful. Like I say, you learn more from the failures than you do the successes, just like I did as a tennis player. So, but I think if one of the things we're hearing today is people don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. And if you're working for someone that's a tyrant, and I've talked to a number of mentees about this, see if you can find another place in the same organization working for a different boss. And one of them called me up, and he was going to discourage his boss, who was just miserable. Finally, his boss got fired, so he had a job that he could let. So I think we need to understand that. The thing I don't agree with is new cliche called quiet quitting. You just quit on the job. I think that's a lose-lose proposition. You lose because you're in a job you don't like, and the company loses because you're not giving it your all. Better to go sit out on the beach or to find another job in the same organization.
I saw that article in Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago, and I was also like scratching my head. That's awful. If you're miserable, pick yourself up, find somewhere where you'll have where you'll find your true north. Don't stay where you are and just be miserable and not deliver and then kill your reputation. It's just
Yitzchok, you got it. You just nailed it right there. Go where you can find you're with your people you want to be with. You can flourish. You can be yourself. Don't be in an organization where you have to fake it to make it. That's the other bad idea. If you can't be real, then you're in the wrong place.
We're speaking with Bill George, former Medtronic chairman and CEO, noted best-selling author, and his book was just re-released, True North, Emerging Leader Edition, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace. It's a Wiley publication. It's available at Barnes & Noble and bookstores nationwide, of course, on Amazon. We're going to take a short commercial break. Stay tuned. And we're back. Mind Your Business with Yitzchok Saftlas right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, reaching the entire New York, New Jersey metro area, and of course on the powerful iHeartRadio network. Of course, hello to all those watching us on YouTube. By the way, feel free to make comments down in the comment section on YouTube. Bill, to me, he's not saying anything that should really get someone's goat. It's all straight up. He says it like it is. But if you feel you want to comment on it or disagree, write it in the comment section. That's what YouTube's about. Feel free to share your information. But I certainly feel privileged and honored to include Bill George as a guest of mine. We've had many great guests, and this is certainly a treat. Thank you, Bill, for carving out some time for us.
Thank you.
Let's jump into actually, this is a chart you have in the book, and you discuss the transformation from I to we. And in the previous segment, you talked about learning from life, rubbing up against the world, stepping up to lead, peak leadership, then the wisdom of giving back. Could you walk us through that journey of from I to we?
We all start out, Yitzchok, as I leaders. When you're in school, you're trying to get good grades. You're trying to make it in sports and an organization. And it's more about you. The same is true when you go out to college or tech, whatever you do. And your first job, you're an individual contributor. You don't start out in a big leadership role. And so I think the key, though, is you have to make that transition to realize it's not all about you. It's all about people on your team. And that your job, they're not there to serve you. You're there to serve them. Their job is not to help you get ahead. You're there to help everyone on your team reach their full potential. And if I could say one thing that I think is critical, that's what a leader does, is help everyone on their team reach their full potential. And if you do that, people are going to be very dedicated. They're going to know you care about them, and they're going to want to work with you. Sometimes you have to challenge them. Other times you have to help them. But that's your job as a leader. So you have to make that I to we journey, which for many people takes maybe decades even, because you go out as an I leader. I had a colleague, Kevin Scherer, who failed when he left GE and went to MCI, and it was all about Kevin wanting to be CEO, and he got fired or had to leave. He didn't actually get fired, he had to leave. But he was miserable. And then he went out into the wilderness for a while and came back and understudied the CEO of Amgen. He became a great CEO of Amgen, did a fantastic job, but he made that I to we journey. I think we all have to go through that.
Now, one of the points that you mentioned is to sometimes we need to share criticisms with people on our team. What is your suggestion and method on how to go about that? Because people are human and they kind of dig in, and not everyone is as open to critique as as you espouse. What's the way to go about that?
Yitzchok, you've got fantastic abilities, but this year you're not bringing us your best game. I think you can do a lot better. And so let's talk about ways you can improve. You're like an athlete. You want to be the best. And right now, you're not the best you can be. So I'd like to work with you and help you become the best. But here are some suggestions, things I've observed. Tell me if I'm wrong on that, and see if you can build on that to become better at what you do. I think you can be a great leader. But, I get some of this feedback from your people that you're too brusque, you're too impatient, you don't really listen to them. And so let's talk that through.
Wow, what a textbook response. Wow, textbook response. That was incredible. I mean, it's build them up, show that it's in their best interest, not just, you did this wrong, why are you doing this? Just coming down hard like some leaders do and kind of kill the relationship.
Right. It's all about relationships. And you have to have that rapport. They have to know you care about them. If they think you're just trying to take advantage of them, no one's going to listen to you.
Let's go back to something we talked about earlier in the show, and it's such a great theme that you address throughout the book, becoming self-aware. I'm going to read another sentence here. Without self-awareness, it is easy to get caught up in chasing external symbols of success rather than becoming the person you want to be. How, again, we discussed it in the beginning, but just coming back to it because this is really the essence of your true north. How important is it, and how does one go about finding their real essence? Perhaps do you share taking one of those tests, the Colby, the assessments? What's your take on that, and how someone could find their really becoming self-aware?
Self-awareness is arguably the most important quality that every leader has to have. And I think we've talked earlier about how you get to know yourself and who you are, but I think you need to have practices that help you develop that. One of the practices I recommend is people are so caught up in the 24/7 world. They got their task lists, they're go, go, go all the time. You have no perspective. So I recommend strongly that people take at least 20 minutes a day, put aside all the electronics, and be mindful. I happen to be a meditator. They can meditate. Maybe they take a walk. Maybe they go for a jog. Maybe they just sit in the garden and reflect. How did I show up as a leader today? How effective was I? How did I show up as a person? Was I fulfilled by what I did today? And really reflect on that. That's the first thing. So it's more of an inward process. Then there's the outer process of getting a 360 review from your teammates, primarily your subordinates and your peers. Your bosses give you one set, but they often see you at your best. Everyone else gets to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I say get feedback from people and ask people, how am I doing? And give me feedback. And if they're uncomfortable doing it orally, have them put it in writing. But then you really learn from that. I think you learn. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. So I think you learn from the feedback that people give you. There was a guy named Doug Baker that got some horrible feedback when he was a young leader coming up. He later turned into one of the greatest leaders of his generation as CEO of Ecolab for 16 years. Recently stepped down from that role, 60 years old. fantastic leader. Got the job in his early 40s. And but he learned more from that process of getting negative feedback that helped him and turned him into a great leader.
On page 91 of the new release, and again, we're speaking with Bill George, the re-release just came out in late August, True North, Emerging Leader Edition, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace. It's a Wiley publication. It's available at bookstores nationwide and, of course, on Amazon. On page 91, figure 4.2, Peeling Your Onion. And that's where really Bill goes through the authentic self and to it's amazing how you packaged it, peeling back the onion, going through understanding your life story, understanding your blind spots, your desires, your vulnerabilities. That's a great way of framing it. Peeling back the onion. You want to elaborate on that? Or
when I was teaching MBAs at Harvard, when we talked self-awareness, I would go to the store and come back with these are small groups of 6 people each. We might have had 10 of them. And so I brought them all an onion, put them in a small room, and put a knife in there and didn't say anything. But the way sometimes you have to cut the onion in half. If you keep trying to peel the leaves, it'll be a long time to get to the center. By the time you do, you'll be, from all the onion, you'll be weeping so hard you can't see. Cut to the center and find out, how do I get through all those things to protect me from being a real person? And that's what I'm talking about. How can I be real? Can I openly admit my fears, my vulnerabilities, my mistakes, times I failed? And you'll find when you do that, you build real rapport. See, we don't connect at the head. We connect at the heart. We don't connect with somebody who says, I'm the smartest guy in this room and I want you to support. You connect at the heart. And the heart is where qualities like passion, compassion, empathy, and courage reside. And so I think by having that self-awareness, you can connect with other people and then ask them to share in a very deep and open way. But you got to go first. And I think that's what we find in these small groups and in other ways, getting people to do that, they become much better leaders. Willingness to be vulnerable and realize when I'm vulnerable, I have the power. So I think that's a whole new learning.
Bill, when you spoke at Google, so you had talked about the distance between, you quoted someone about the distance between the heart and the mind. That was a great quote about, what is it, the longest journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that from Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Buddhist monk who died last year. He said the longest journey you'll ever take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. And we were on a walking meditation. Actually, it was with Mikhail Gorbachev, who had a conference back about 20 years ago. But I learned this from him, and it's been the most powerful thing I've learned. That how do you connect the head and the heart? Obviously, you have to use your power, your brain power that your creator gave you. You have to know how to run the numbers. You have to be smart enough to understand and make critical decisions and look at all the angles. But at the same time, today, you have to lead with the heart. And leaders that only lead with their heads are not making it. That's one of the reasons we need this new generation of emerging leaders to step up that knows how to lead with their hearts and can be open and can be real. And so I am strongly urging people to lead with their hearts and realize that that's not soft. As I told you, in challenging people, that can be quite hard. But it is really how you become a great leader, is to lead with your heart and have compassion, have the courage. Many people with very big executive positions lack courage. You got to have the courage that, you may fail, you may get rejected, but that's part of being real.
We're speaking with Bill George, and we are honored to be announcing, among the other promotion that's being done, his re-release of his book, True North, a Emerging Leader Edition, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace. It's available at bookstores nationwide and, of course, on Amazon. We're going to come back with the final segment of tonight's show right after this commercial break. Stay tuned. And we're back. Mind Your Business with Yitzchok Saftlas right here on 710 WOR. And, of course, on the powerful iHeartRadio network. In the last segment of tonight's show, we're going to be talking about accountability, building a support team, a couple of other incredible and vital, that's really the word, vital concepts in leadership. We're speaking with Bill George. His book was just recently re-released, True North, Emerging Leader Edition, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace. It's a Wiley publication, available at bookstores and of course, online. Bill, let's talk about, it is really a key question that I really love asking people of your stature and life experience and success. And that is, at the end of the day, leaders are accountable, for better or for worse. They're kind of judged by financial results. Year after year, as you pulled off at Medtronic somehow, where you took it from 1.1 billion to 60 billion. Now that requires a lot of, no nonsense. I don't have to tell you. The question is, how does someone balance that with being a mensch? Not just showing up and being a drill sergeant, but also bringing them in. I guess it's a combination of also EQ and IQ. It's a loaded question, but I feel comfortable asking you.
It's a great question. Let me say that long-term shareholder value, what I call sustainable value, is not created by the CEO and CFO sitting down and figuring out how to manipulate the numbers to get the results that Wall Street wants. That may help you in the short term, or a guy like Adam Aron, who's one of the great marketers of all time, running AMC Entertainment now, is trying to hype his stock. That's not going to get you there. You can never sustain it that way. I think the only way to do it is you've got to create greater value for your customers than your competitors do. Unless you can do that, your businesses, that's how General Motors went bankrupt. And that's what companies are trying to do. That's why Elon Musk creates such great value at Tesla. People love the cars. So I think that you've got to create that value. Now, we need to understand much more deeply what motivates our employees. The thing I can tell you does not motivate your employees is telling them they've got to earn $3.91 a share this quarter. No employee is working on a production line or in an R&D lab or at Merck or Science Center or in supporting doctors in a hospital like Medtronic people is going to resonate with that. They resonate with creating value for customers. And if you can do that, you'll be there. But that's what motivates your employees. That's why you have superior customer service. That's why Delta's customer service is so much better than United or Americans. And so it's that kind of resonance that motivates your employees and gets them to come up with really innovative ideas and creativity and have their hearts, working with their hearts as well as their heads inside the company. So that's how you create sustainable shareholder. That's what we did at Medtronic. That's how you create sustainable shareholder value. If it's like General Electric, and our mission is making money, no one resonates with that. And that's why General Electric basically is out of business now. It's a tragedy. The world's greatest company now is going out of business. So that's what happens. I think if you don't really focus on all your stakeholders, not just your shareholders of the last 5 minutes.
Wow. On that point, leadership with purpose and passion. Empowering people to lead. Now, of course, you just spent some time talking about that. What are some other techniques, guidance that you could share on building a team and empowering them to lead?
Well, it is all about your team. And I think great leaders recognize that, and they're there to serve their teams, as I said earlier. But then you bring the team together around a common purpose and values. We've got to get agreement on what is our goal. Yes, we want to win. Any great sports team wants to win and doesn't feel good when they're losing. They know they're going to lose some games, but they want to win, and that's how they learn. So I think that's your job as a leader, to unite people around that and then challenge them to step up, to perform their best, reach their full potential, work together as a team. If somebody wants to be an individual star and won't work with a team, they may have to go away. And then as a leader today, don't sit up in your office and judge people. Get out and help them, work with people. And I think that's the new way of leading. A leader today is much more of a coach, as I write about in my new book, not the older books, a coach than they are a director. They know, or even more than a manager. They know how to care about people. They know how to organize. They know how to line them. They know how to challenge them, and they know how to help. And if you can do those things, you'll be a great leader, and you'll build great teams. And finally, your people will go out and take on greater challenges because they'll become great leaders too.
Coming back to Medtronic, and on page 190 in the new release, we're speaking with Bill George, of course, the author of True North, Emerging Leader Edition, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace, a Wiley publication. It's available at bookstores nationwide and, of course, online. On page 190, in the subject of leading people, you talk about Omar Ishrak, and the subhead of that chapter of that section of the book, from making money to improving lives. How important is that to build a mindset that let's change the world, let's accomplish something in our lifetime that leaves the world a better place than we entered it?
Isn't that why we're here on Earth? Isn't that our goal? We're given certain gifts. We have to develop our gifts, and then we give them back to try to make this world a better place for everyone. You look at Omar. Omar is a kid that came from Bangladesh, went to London to get his education, wound up sticking around to get a PhD in electrical engineering. Brilliant guy. He was at GE for 16 years. His field was ultrasound. And GE's only mission was making money. He totally transformed himself and his leadership when he came to Medtronic, because he saw that Medtronic's mission was restoring people to full life and health. And he got totally committed to that. And he did a spectacular job transforming the company, getting into new technologies that would save people's lives. And the metric at Medtronic was not earnings per share. The metric was, how many seconds does it take until another person's life is healed by a Medtronic product? When I went there, it was 100 seconds. When I left, it was down to 7. Now Omar tells me it's 2 per second. So you can see a lot more people are being helped because of what Omar did to expand the business. And he recognizes now the power of the mission and the values. And he couldn't stop talking about it at Medtronic. And that's why he's such a fabulous leader.
In chapter 12 of the book, True North, Leading in Crisis, and you have a line from Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. What is your suggestion? I know this is only a few minutes left. What is your take about turning a crisis into an opportunity, and how to still, you're the captain of the ship and it's traveling through rough waters? How does one exude that everything is okay while maintaining control at the helm under very difficult circumstances?
Well, I think in a crisis is a real test of a leader. And certainly leaders got tested in COVID. One of them was Corey Berry, who became CEO of Best Buy when she was 44 years old. She succeeded a highly successful CEO, transformed the company, Hugh Bears-Lee, who actually wrote in his book, Layoffs of the Last Resort. Well, Corey had to adapt very quickly to the crises, but she saw the opportunities to take their showrooms where people couldn't come in because of COVID and turn them into distribution centers and much better online service. Come to the store, pick up your product, take it any way you want, and really transform the company in real time in just a matter of weeks, and did a fantastic job. So she went from closing 1,000 stores to reopening them 3 months later, but totally transformed the business they were in and did an amazing job. So that's a young leader that really knows how to step up and lead. So to her credit, I had great admiration for her.
As we're closing out the show, on page 198 of Bill's book, True North, you have practical suggestions for your development. Write down your true north and show how it points to your North Star. Examine your current organization's mission and discern how it aligns with your North Star. Make a list of specific actions you can take to translate your organization's mission into reality. How important is that as you reflect on Bill George building and maintaining and following through on your dream of your true north?
Well, I used to try to do this as an up-and-coming leader in companies and really be reflective and think about these things. I encourage everyone to do it. And if you're clear about your values, your principles, your beliefs, and you carry those out in your work, you can become what I call a moral leader. That's true to that's not a religious statement, but you're true to your beliefs and your principles and your values. And that's what people want today. And young people don't want to work with you unless you are true, unless they know who's the real person inside, who's very authentic. admits his mistakes or her mistakes, and builds a team inclusively of people. That's what great leaders do. And that's how you become a moral leader, that you're going to make a difference in the world. We as a team are going to make a difference, as we did at Medtronic. But it isn't just the healthcare business, it's all business. We can make a difference in the lives of people and help them secure their financial futures. We can give them really outstanding products to help them make their lives better. That's all of our jobs as leaders. And I think we're seeing the next generation of leaders that this book is targeted like a rifle on the next generation of Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z that are really going to transform. And that's exactly what we need them to do.
What an incredible show. Wow. Bill George, the author of True North. The new release just came out in August of 2022. For those listening on YouTube and many years from now, the Emerging Leader Edition, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace. What an honor and a privilege. For those that tuned in late, where were you? But good news, there's Spotify, there's Apple Podcast. We're going to be up on all the popular podcasting channels. And of course, this will make a very popular YouTube episode. It will be up on YouTube in a couple of weeks. For those that are subscribed, you'll automatically be notified on YouTube. We're at 710 WOR Mind Your Business. Follow us. Comment on the show. You heard some incredible perspective. This wraps up an incredible edition of Mind Your Business. Tune in again next Sunday night for another great edition of Mind Your Business right here on the Voice of New York, 710 WOR. Have a successful week. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and be notified every single time a new video goes live. Don't miss out on any of the weekly interviews that I have with top business leaders, sometimes Fortune 500 executives. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.